Hi, Rock Tranel, CEO and founder of the Tranel Financial Group, and today I'm going to be reading Chapter 1 of 8 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Retired. Tyler Braun and I co-authored this book, and the whole idea was that we would share principles and financial planning concepts with you, but not have it be a book about numbers and number crunching, and it's a book about stories. And it's just a fantastic book. And the first time I read to you the invitation, and it was just a real good talking about Bob and talking about Barb and going to his retirement party. So chapter 1 is Gina, the first person that he met at his retirement party, a longtime mentor, just having a really good conversation with him. So here is chapter 1, Finding Purpose, 8 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Retired. Gina's story. From frustration to triumph. There's an old story about 3 bricklayers. They were spreading mortar and stacking bricks, all doing the same actions side by side. They looked nearly identical. One man, walking by on his way home, stopped and asked, "What are you doing?" The first bricklayer barely glanced away from his work, shouting briskly, "I'm laying bricks." The second bricklayer looked up and said, "I'm putting up a wall." The third bricklayer made a direct eye contact with the passerby. He looked at the sky and said, "I'm building a cathedral for God." The first bricklayer can barely see beyond his own hands. He describes his work as only the physical action he is engaged in at the moment. He doesn't consider an overarching goal or a greater purpose. The second bricklayer sees his work as a part of something larger than putting one brick on top of another, but his imagination is limited. The third bricklayer exemplifies pride, positive attitude, and perspective. His pride in his work motivates him to work hard, enabling a higher probability of success. His positive attitude propels him through moments of struggle because he believes this is his ultimate triumph. He can make it through difficult moments. His perspective, his ability to see the bigger picture of what he is doing, allows him to focus his energy on the most important tasks and provides motivation to excel. All of these character traits depend on a strong sense of self. A fable of the 3 bricklayers illustrates the importance of attitude. Some people imagine that retirement is a static thing. You step out into the porch, find your lounge chair, and settle in. Actually, like any other phase of life, retirement is a journey. It requires motivation and persistence. In order to have a successful and fulfilling retirement, you have to find something that gives you the third bricklayer's pride, positive attitude, and perspective. In short, you have to have purpose. Purpose is something that comes from who you are, your values, your traditions, and your passions. Finding your purpose is a personal journey. No one else can do it for you. This has always been Gina's motto. We live in a society that doesn't necessarily bend to our will. Perhaps your purpose has to do with caring for your family. Perhaps it's rooted in your community or your faith. Maybe your purpose lies in using your professional expertise in a charitable endeavor. No matter what it is, it has to be something that really drives you. Gina has always felt that her purpose has to be distinct from her career. It keeps her grounded. But when she talks to friends who are about to retire, she sees a lot of anxiety about what is to come next. Retirement is a drastic change. Day-to-day life radically shifts. Some people have worked in an industry or even in a single company for 40 years. They're likely accustomed to waking up at the same time, doing similar tasks throughout the day, and coming home to the same comforts at the end of the day. They might go out to the same restaurants on weekends with the same friends. Retirement brings a change in the day-to-day routines. It's natural to feel uncertain about this change. This is a time when life is about to be different from how it's ever been before. When Gina was younger, she felt nervous when she decided to take time away from her work to care for her kids. She thought, at the time, that she might lose who she was because she wasn't working accounts, managing others, using her analytical skills. But that really didn't happen. It was hard at first, but she found purpose in a different way. She still found ways to sharpen her skills and interests, and when she did go back to work, it was all still there. Yet, even with that prior experience with a major life change, Gina struggled at the start of her retirement. At first, she didn't know her purpose. She started in a state of real stress. She had to move forward slowly. From the outside, it looked like Gina had everything set in place when she retired. And in some ways, she did. Her assets were in good shape, but she didn't know what she was actually going to do with herself. And because she didn't have purpose, things really changed. She didn't know how she was going to spend her potentially lonely and unfulfilling golden years, and that really worried her. Gina had been saving above and beyond what she needed for a long time. Every time she made a sale, no matter how big or how small, she invested a percentage of her commission in addition to her normal payroll contributions. Her divorce was long settled, and her daughter was grown and self-sufficient. Her finances were in order. She was ahead of schedule. For years, Gina had spearheaded week-long, late-night pushes to meet ambitious deadlines. Thanks to her creativity and calculated risk-taking, the company grew in unprecedented ways. But Gina was also stressed during the last decade of her career. She took on more tasks than most managers do. She was very hands-on. Her employees were extremely motivated by working on her team, but her mental health had suffered. Toward the end, she developed a tremor in her hands. When she retired early, at age 60, her family and coworkers felt relieved. When Gina retired, she was finally secure. But at first, she really didn't know what to do with herself. She was accustomed to having meetings to moderate, calls to make, and performance reports to review. Without that structure, she didn't know how to proceed. Surely you can imagine the frustration of being in that situation. Gina loved the solitude of living alone, but until she retired, she didn't realize how much she depended on the structure of her work to bring her into contact with other people. Once she retired, she kept to herself a lot, too much. She ended up spending all her time alone. Before, she'd always held engagements after work, but she stopped going to things like Bible study and book club because she'd always gone straight from work. She stopped going on her lunchtime walks because they weren't part of her break in her normal workday. Looking back, Gina knows that if her friends had known what was happening, they would have been there for her. But at the time, Gina had no idea how isolated she really was. In fact, Gina had no idea how bad things were until about 2 years into her retirement. She was feeling a little woozy at times and decided to go to the doctor. After a few tests, she learned that she developed type 2 diabetes. All those years of late night work and takeout, plus her more recent inactivity, had taken their toll. Isolation had become a health problem. Gina's health had been good before retirement, but when she retired, she simply stopped keeping up with her well-being. Gina had begun a retirement in what she thought was security, but she quickly ended up in a state of frustration. She had to make some real lifestyle changes. She had to account for the extra medical expenses, as well as the need to implement new exercise and dietary regimes. It wasn't easy, and throughout it all, her daughter, Amelia, worried. Amelia is Gina's only daughter. Gina, a single mother, and her daughter have always clung to each other. They're as close as a parent and child can be. But at the time, Amelia was living in Detroit. working as a project manager for one of the big car companies. She loved her career, but she wanted to help her mother. Amelia traveled back and forth to go to the doctor's appointments with Gina. She called her mother every day. They even shared a health tracking app to keep Gina accountable for all the changes she had put into practice. At first, Gina felt guilty for taking up Amelia's time and energy. She wanted her daughter to go off and be independent. She was single, living in a city she loved, and only 25 years old. Gina wanted to go out with her friends on the weekends, not come home and help her mother, but Amelia was a devoted daughter. She wanted to be there for her mom. After 6 months or so of traveling back and forth, Amelia told Gina that she decided to move back home. She'd accepted a job with the county transit office without even telling her mother she'd interviewed there. Amelia didn't want Gina to feel like a burden, so she kept it a secret. Gina didn't want her daughter to abandon her ambitions. She wanted Amelia to focus on her career goals. But once Amelia returned, both she and Gina agreed it was the right choice. The two had grown apart while Amelia was away at school. She was very ambitious, and Gina was proud of her daughter's accomplishment, but both of them were working hard and didn't make enough time to keep up with each other. They texted every day, but sometimes they'd go weeks without talking on the phone. Once she moved back, Amelia finally confided that she'd been suffering from depression. She realized after years of working hard and during the day and playing hard at night, she was using alcohol as a coping mechanism. When Gina got sick and Amelia started visiting home on the weekends, rather than going out, she realized she had a problem. As she helped her mother to gain control of her health, she started taking stock of her own habits. Without ever telling her mother, Amelia quit drinking and started going to therapy. Gina had no idea that when Amelia decided to move home, it wasn't just to help her mother, it was a part of her recovery. Amelia wanted to take better care of herself while also taking better care of Gina. A mother's illness became a daughter's saving grace. The two had been in a state of stress, but thanks to God's grace, they worked together to rebuild. Now Gina's diabetes is under control. In fact, she's even working again, by choice, not necessity. Once Amelia moved back, Gina began to feel a lot more settled and comfortable in her routines. She stayed on top of her diet and exercise. In fact, Gina's endocrinologist was so impressed by her switch to a vegetarian diet and her biking regime that she connected Gina with an organization that helps newly diagnosed diabetics understand their condition. Gina started volunteering there, mostly giving testimonials at support group meetings and meeting one-on-one with folks who were having a hard time adjusting. She was shocked to see how few people had good networks of support. There's a lot of shame that comes with illness. Some diabetics don't even tell their families at first. Gina was motivated to find clarity and fulfillment in her life, so she worked for the organization as a volunteer. She kept speaking and counseling, and along the way, she saw little ways that she saw that could be run more efficiently. After a couple years of holding her tongue, Gina developed a good relationship with the COO, and one day at lunch, Gina told her she noticed a few things that could save the organization significant money, especially on scheduling. The two got talking, and the COO and Gina asked if she'd be willing to come on as a paid consultant. Gina accepted the offer. Now Gina is only working a couple days a week, but she really feels great about it. She spends plenty of time with Amelia, who's newly engaged and getting married in September. Gina adores her daughter's fiancé and is ready to welcome a new member to their family. Finally, after a decade, she feels like she has reached triumph in her retirement. Although it hasn't been easy, Gina is grateful for all that she has learned along the way to triumph. Gina now understands how important her relationship with her daughter is to her overall well-being. From the foundation of love and support, She reaches out to care for others who aren't so lucky. Gina's journey of purpose guided her toward a life of gratitude and service, and we couldn't be happier for her. So at the end of each chapter here, there's just a little conversation and a scorecard. And you can take just read this, and I'll just read quickly the scorecard to you. But it's a way for you to have self-evaluation to see where you're at on the journey of purpose. So you may not be entirely sure how you'll find purpose in retirement, and that's okay. As Gina's story shows, finding purpose can take time and effort. The first step in this journey is to evaluate where you find yourself right now. Think about your life outside of work. What brings you happiness and fulfillment? Do you find satisfaction in family, in a hobby, or in an interest that you haven't had time to research in recent years? Whatever your purpose is, it will be something that sustains you. Using the scorecard below, rate yourself on the continuum of purpose. And it says on the top, on the personal scorecard, 8 things I wish I knew before I retired. This is about your mindset. I measure my purpose through my growth, through my impact on myself and community on the world. And then you could check, so not me, I'm working towards this, or you know me so well. I've enjoyed reading chapter 1, 8 things I wish I knew before I retired. I'm Tranel. I'm the CEO and founder of the Tranel Financial Group, and I co-authored this book with my good friend Tyler Braun.